JFreeChart Architecture. Here you can see class level architecture. JFreeChart is an open source framework for the programming language Java, which allows the creation of a wide variety of both interactive and non-interactive charts. Here you can see application level architecture. Application level architecture shows the location of JFreeChart library in a Java application. Here the user data is received by the client program. Standard Java and JFreeChart APIs are used to generate the output in the form of either a frame which can be displayed directly inside the application or independently in the image formats such as JPEG or PNG. Here input is connected to client program, Java API is connected to client program, JFreeChart API is connected to client program is connected to output is connected to application frame, and output is connected to PNG, JPEG. Now we are focusing on file. The file represents the user input used for creating a dataset in the file. A computer file is a computer resource for recording data in a computer storage device, primarily identified by its file name. Just as words can be written to a paper, so can data be written to a computer file. Files can be shared with and transferred between computers and mobile devices via removable media, networks, or the internet. As an example, we can consider this code segment. Here read a simple data from a given text file from a given location. Here finds the digits in a given string. Here the class file, an abstract representation of file and directory path names. This is in module java.base and package java.io. You can see the input data here in the test.txt file. As an exception example, we can consider null pointer exception. If the path name argument is null in the constructor public file string path name in class file. Now we are focusing on database. The database represents the source having user input used for creating a dataset in the database. Database, also called electronic database, any collection of data or information that is specially organized for rapid search and retrieval by a computer. Databases are structured to facilitate the storage, retrieval, modification, and deletion of data in conjunction with various data processing operations. A database management system, DBMS, extracts information from the database in response to queries. As an example, we can consider this code segment here. This example retrieves data from MySQL table. Here JDBC category dataset is created here. The interface connection, a connection session with a specific database SQL statements are executed and results are returned within the context of a connection. The connection is interface connection is in the module java.sql and the package java.sql. The class JDBC category database here the declaration is not visible here. This dataset is declared somewhere else, and the class JDBC category dataset, a category dataset implementation over a database JDBC result set. The dataset is populated via a call to execute query string here with the string SQL query. SQL query must return at least 2 columns here. The first column will be the category name, and the remaining columns are values for the chart. Each column represent a series. Subsequent call to execute query string will refresh dataset, and JDBC the class JDBC category dataset is in package org.jfree.data.jdbc. Here JDBC category database is dataset is created, and it takes a database connection as a parameter. Here the execute query populates the dataset by executing the supplied query against the existing database connection. As an example 2, we can consider this code segment. Here the interface connection, a connection session with specific database. SQL statements are executed and results are returned within the context of a connection. The interface connection is in module java.sql and package java.sql. The class JDBC Pi dataset, a Pi dataset that reads data from a database via JDBC. And JDBC Pi dataset is in org.jfree.data.jdbc package. As an exception example, we can consider SQL exception. If a database access error occurs or the URL is null in method public static connection get connection string URL properties info in class driver manager. Now we are focusing on create dataset. The create dataset represents the dataset which is being created and stored into the object. Here as an example, we can consider interface dataset, the base interface for datasets. All datasets are required to support the dataset change event mechanism by allowing listeners to register and retrieve notification of any changes to the dataset. In addition, all datasets must belong to one and only one dataset group. The group object maintains a reader-writer lock which provides synchronized access to the datasets in multi-threaded code. The interface dataset is in package org.jfree.data.general. Now we are focusing on general dataset. The general dataset is a type of dataset which is used to create pie charts. As an example, we can consider pie dataset. Interface pie dataset. A general purpose dataset where values are associated with keys. As the name suggests, you can use this dataset to supply data for pie charts. Refer the pie plot class also. Interface pie dataset is in package org.jfree.data.general. As an example 2, we can consider this code segment here. The class default pie dataset, a default implementation of the pie dataset interface. This is in org.jfree.data.general package. Here construct a new dataset, initially empty. Here in the method set value sets the data value for a key and sent a dataset change event to all registered listeners. Here the key, this is the key, and null not permitted, and this is the value. As an exception example, we can consider illegal argument exception. If the key is null in method public void set value comparable key number value in class default pie dataset. As an error example, we can consider this error: java.lang.no class def found error in org/jfree/data/pie dataset. Now we are focusing on category dataset. The interface for a dataset with one or more series and values associated with categories. The category dataset is a type of dataset which is widely used for bar chart, line chart, etc. Here the interface category dataset. The interface for a dataset with one or more series and values associated with categories. The categories are represented by comparable instance, with the category label being provided by the toString method. Interface category dataset is in package org.jfree.data.category. As an example 2, we can consider this code segment. Here the class default category dataset. A default implementation of the category dataset interface. The class default category is in package org.jfree.data.category. Here creates a new empty dataset. Thus, the method set value adds or update a value in the table and sends a data set change event to all registered listeners. Here, this is the value null permitted. This is raw key, the raw key null not permitted. Column key, the column key null not permitted. As an exception, we can consider unknown key exception. If either key is not defined in the data set, in method public number get value comparable new key, raw key comparable column key in class default category dataset. As an error example, we can consider this one occurred in the environment with JFreeChart 1.0.4 and JCommon 1.0.8. Create line chart string category dataset boolean in chart factory cannot be applied to string category dataset oriented and boolean. Now we are focusing on series dataset. The interface for a dataset consisting of one or many series of data. The series dataset is a type of dataset which is used for storing series of data and construct line charts. As an example, here we can consider series dataset. The interface series dataset. The interface for a dataset consisting of one or many series of data. This is in package org.jfree.data.general. As an example 2, we can consider this code segment. Here the class default XYZ dataset. The default implementation of XYZ dataset interface that stores data values in arrays of double primitives. Here the add series method adds a series or if a series with same key exists, if the series with same key already exists, replaces the data for that series, then sends a data set change event to all registered listeners. Here, this is the first parameter series key. The series key null not permitted. Second parameter is a data. It's a double two-dimensional array. The data must be an array with length 3. Containing 3 arrays of equal length. the first containing x values, the second containing y values, and the third containing z values. The default XYZ data set is in package org.jfree.data.xy. As the example 3, we can consider this code segment. The class histogram dataset, a dataset that can be used for creating histograms. This is in package org.jfree.data.statistics. The method public void add series comparable key double array values int bins. This add series method adds a series to the data set using the specified number of bins, and sends a dataset change event to all registered listeners. Here the key, the series key, not null permitted. The values not null permitted. And bins, the number of bins must be at least 1. The histogram dataset is in the package org.jfree.data.statistics. As an exception example, we can consider array index out of bound exception. If series is not within the specified range, in method public double get x value int series int item in class default xyz dataset. Now we are focusing on series collection dataset. The series collection dataset represents the various categories of series datasets that are added to series collection dataset. This type of dataset is used for XY line charts. As an example, we can consider this code segment. Here class XY series collection. This class represent a collection of XY series objects that can be used as a dataset. This class is in package org.jfree.data.xy. The class XY series represent a sequence of 0 or more data items in X and Y forms. By default, items in the series will be sorted into ascending order by X value, and duplicate X values are permitted. Both the sorting and duplicate default can be changed with the constructor. Y values can be null to represent missing values. Here in the add method adds a data item to the series and sends a series change event to all registered values or all registered listeners. Here X, the X value, and here y, the y value. Here the add series adds a series to the collection and sends a dataset change event to all registered listeners. Here the parameters the series null not permitted. As an example too, we can consider this code segment. The class time series collection, a collection of time series objects. This class implements the XY dataset interface as well as the extended interval XY dataset interface. This make it a convenient dataset for use with the XY plot class. This class is in package org.jfree.data.time. Here in time series represent a sequence of 0 or more data items in the form period and value, where period is some instance of a subclass of a regular time period. The time series will ensure that all data items have the same type of period, for example day, and here minute, and b that each period appears at the most one time in the series. Here adds a new data item to the series and sends a series change event to all registered listeners. Period here, the time period, null not permitted here, and the value is the value here. Here in add series, adds a series to the collection and sends a data set change event to the all registers listeners. Here the series null not permitted. As an exception example, we can consider property veto exception in method public void vetable change property change event e in class time series collection. As an example, we can consider this one. This data set already contains a series with the key data at org.jfree.data.xy series collection at series xy series collection.java. Yeah. Now we are focusing on create chart. The create chart is the method which is executed to create final chart. A chart is a graphical representation for data visualization in which the data is represented by symbols such as bars in a bar chart, lines in a line chart, or slices in a pie chart. A chart can represent tabular numeric data functions or some kinds of quality structure and provides different info. As an example, we can consider class chart factory, a collection of utility methods for creating some standard charts with JFreeChart. This class is in .jfree.chart package. As an example too, we can consider this code segment. Here the method public static JFreeChart create pie chart 3D string title pie dataset boolean legend, boolean tooltips, and boolean URLs. This creates a 3D pie chart using the specified dataset. The chart objects returns by this method uses pie-plot 3D instance as the plot. Here the title, the chart title null permitted, dataset, the dataset for the chart null permitted. Here the legend, a flag specifying whether or not the legend is required. Tooltips, configure chart to generate tooltips. URLs, configure chart to generate URLs. The JFreeChart, the class JFreeChart here, a chart class implemented using the Java 2D APIs. The current version supports bar charts, line charts, pie charts, and XY plots, including time series data. Here the method getPlot returns the plot for the chart. The plot is a class responsible for coordinating the visual representation of data, including axis, if any. Here the class pie-plot3D, a plot that uses a plot that displays data in the form of 3D pie chart. Using data from any class that implements the pie dataset. The method set start angle sets the starting angle and sends a plot change event to all registered listeners. The initial value is 90 degrees, which corresponds to 12 o'clock. The value 0 corresponds to 3 o'clock. This is the encoding used by Java Arc2D class. Here you can see the parameters angle, the angle in degrees. The set direction method sets the direction in which the pie sections are drawn and sends a plot change event to all registered listeners. Here the direction here null not permitted. Here the foreground alpha sets the alpha transparency for the plot and sends a plot change event to all registered listeners. Here you can see alpha in float value. the new alpha transparency here. As an example 3, we can consider this code segment. The method public static JFreeChart create bar chart string title string category x-axis label string value axis label category dataset plot orientation here, boolean legend here, boolean tooltips, and boolean URLs. This method creates a bar chart. The chart object returned by this method uses a category plot instance as the plot with the category axis for the domain axis, a number axis as the range axis, and a bar renderer as the renderer. Here the title, the chart title null permitted. Here the category axis label, the label for category axis null permitted. Here the value axis label, the label for the value axis null permitted. Dataset, the dataset for the chart null permitted. Orientation, the plot orientation horizontal or vertical, null not permitted. Legend, the flag is specifying whether or not the legend is required. Tooltips, configure chart to generate tooltips. URLs, configure chart to generate URLs. This method returns a bar chart. As an example 4, we can consider this code segment. Here the method public static JFreeChart create XY line chart string title string x-axis label string y-axis label XY dataset plot orientation boolean legend, boolean tooltips, and boolean URLs. This method create a line chart based on an XY dataset with default settings. Here title, the chart title null permitted. Here x-axis label, a label for the x-axis null permitted. Here y-axis label, a label for y-axis null permitted. Dataset, the dataset for the chart null permitted. Orientation, plot the plot orientation horizontal or vertical, null not permitted. Legend, a flag is specifying whether or not legend is required. Tooltips, configure chart to generate tooltips. URLs, configure chart to generate URLs. This method returns the chart. Here the get XY plot, this returns the plot cast as XY plot. Not if the plot is not an instance of XY plot, then a class cast exception is thrown. Here the XY line and shape renderer, a renderer that connects data points with lines or draws shapes at each data point. This renderer is designed for use with the XY plot class. Here the set series paint returns the paint used to fill an item. Basically sets the paint used for a series and send a renderer change event to all registers listeners. This is the series index 0 based, and this is the paint null permitted. Here color.red. Here the set series stroke sets the stroke used for a series and sends a renderer change event to all registered listeners. Here this is the series index 0 based, and this is stroke. Here null permitted, and this is stroke. Here the set renderer sets the renderer for the primary dataset and send a change event to all registered listeners. If the renderer is set to null, no data will be displayed. Here you can see the renderer. Here set background paint set the background color of the plot area and sends the plot change event to all registered listeners. Likewise, there are other methods: set range grid lines visible, set range grid line paint, set domain grid lines visible, and set domain grid line paint. Here the method get legend returns the legend for the chart if there is one. Note that the chart can have more than one legend. This means returns the first. So this method returns the first. Here in the set frame sets the frame or border, and you can see the chart title here. So here the chart factory dot create xy line chart creates a new line chart. The parameters of the methods are here: chart title, x axis label, y axis label, data, plot orientation, the 3 flags indicating whether to show legend, tooltips, and URLs. We get a reference to the plot in order to customize it here. Here we set a stroke and color for the line of the chart. XY line and shape renderer is an object that connects data points with lines or draws shapes at each data point. Renderer is set with set renderer method. The set background paint sets the background color of the plot area. We show the grid lines and paint them in black color. And we remove the border around the legend, and we create the chart title with new font. As an example, we can consider this one for exception example. JFreeChart draw method throw null point exception. Exception in thread main java.lang.null point exception at org.freehep.graphics io.emf.emf graphics 2d write pane at org.freehep.graphics io.emf.emf graphics 2d write stroke org.freehep.graphics io.abstract vector graphics io.set stroke at aug.jfree.chart.plot.draw outline, etc. As another example, we can consider this one method create chart class org.jfreeChart factory cannot apply to given types. Required java.lang.string java.lang string java.lang string org.free data.category dataset, etc. here. Now we are focusing on image frame image. The frame image represent that the chart is displayed on a swing frame or an image is created. A frame is a top level window with a title and a border. An image, from Latin imago, is an artifact that depicts visual perception, such as a photograph or other two-dimensional picture that resembles a subject, usually a physical object, and thus provide the depiction of it. In the context of signal processing, an image is a distributed amplitude of a color. A pictorial script is a writing system that employs images as symbols for various semantic entities rather than the abstract signs used by alphabets. You can see here the frame. You can see the title and the border here. This is overlaid bar chart here, and this is the frame title and border. For an image, you can see this one, Lasser's figures implemented with JFreeChart. As an example, we can consider this code segment. Here, you can see the chart frame here. A frame for displaying a chart. Here the construct a frame for a chart. This is a title and this is the chart. Here in the pack causes this window to be sized to fit the preferred size and layouts of its subcomponent. If the window and or its owner are not yet displayable, both are made displayable before calculating the preferred size. The window will be validated after preferred size is calculated. Here the shows or hide this window depending on the value of the parameter. Here the if is true, make the window visible, otherwise hide the window. This chart frame class is in org.jfree.chart package. As an example too, we can consider this code segment here, chart utilities, the class chart utilities, a collection of utility methods for JFreeChart, includes method for converting charts to image formats, PNG or JPEG, plus creating simple HTML image maps. The method public static void main void save chart as PNG file JFreeChart chart int width and int height. This saves a chart to the specified file in the PNG format. This is this chart utilities class is in the package org.jfree.chart. Here you can see the file null not permitted, chart, the chart null not permitted, width, image width and image height. Here the public static void save chart as JPEG file and JFreeChart chart int width and int height. Saves a chart to a file in JPEG format. Here this is the file null not permitted and chart null not permitted, the image width and the image height. As an exception example, in the environment of with Java 1.4 and JFreeChart 0.9.11, exception in thread main java.aw.headless exception at java.aw.graphics environment.check headless at java.aw.window init at java.aw.frame init at java.x.swing.jframe init at org.jfree.ui.application frame, etc. As an exception, another exception example, we can consider IO exception. May occur in method public static void save as JPEG file float quality JFreeChart chart int width int height in class chart utilities. As an error example, we can consider IO error writing PNG file at etc. This is end of my presentation. Thank you very much for watching it.